All right, I hope this works. I heard some bad noises coming out of the microphone before I was up here, but Jeff isn't going to make it today, so I'm going to introduce the topic of transhumanism. And what transhumanism is people using technologies like genetic engineering, um, genetic nanotechnology, chironics, and AI to enhance a human being and direct its evolution. So this will probably be a short one. But anyway, if one of the things, since Jeff can't make it today, if anybody would like to add to the conversation, I have pinned into the comments a link so you could come on stage with me here and contribute a few words of your own. So with that being said, let's get going on. So what transhumanism is human directed evolution. And whether it would be a positive thing or a negative thing would remain to be seen. Now, where we're at with it at this stage is, well, we have that Neuralink. There's that Neuralink chip that they've been working on developing it so that you would have a chip in your head, and this technology would help you maybe to see again, to hear again, or to enhance, maybe you could feel your legs again. So right now they're working on these human enhancements so that maybe you could walk again. So people who have been paraplegic, and they can use these devices to see if they can get them to learn how to walk. And they've tested these things out with veterans who lost their legs in war. And so the technology of transhumanism is in its infancy right now, but we are doing this. We are enhancing or augmenting the human being through technology, and in order to just correct some issues, like maybe you went deaf, so you have a cochlear implant and you are able to hear again, or you have you get your leg, you're get paralyzed, and they then from there they are able to help you to walk again. Now, you not to feel, but just to walk again. And so that is where transhumanism is at right now. Now, there was a company I had heard about on the news the other day over in New Jersey, who they are in the process of, maybe they're probably doing this with animals, but where you could select which embryo you want to have implanted in you, so you could be able to start doing designer children. But they're not going to the route of using CRISPR to genetically engineer the human being, but just to select the best embryos of the ones that were fertilized. So you would be like, they could test for certain things. Oh, well, this one might have autism, or this one might have this, or, oh, this is a high chance that this one would have Down syndrome, or this or that. And so then you would select your best embryo to be implanted in you, to have the best chance that your child would have a happy life. And so if we look at in science fiction literature and movies, now that is the movie Gatacca, but where they use some genetic engineering. And Gatacca came out in 1997, and Gatacca was a takeoff of the book A Brave New World, written by Aldous Huxley in the 1930s. But we have some other things of instrument. I have of the science fiction and so forth that I have followed. So A Brave New World came out in 1932, and it is, the word transhuman is not used in it, but it is all about transhumanism in a form of self-directed evolution. And so where we're at now is in the beginning stages that we would possibly be able to direct our evolution into a new species or into a enhanced human being. Now, I went back and I looked at where was the first time that transhuman, the word itself, entered into the human consciousness, was in the 1300s. In the 1300s, but it was about a human that can transcend, for a transcendent human being that can transcend its own body into a different form of consciousness. And I can see that that was actually, that idea came directly out of like New Testament literature. And you would look at a transcendent human being as pictured, like, okay, if you want to look at it in the Jesus myth, in the Jesus mythologies, in the Jesus scriptures, and you have Jesus goes up on a hilltop, and James is with him, and he comes down, and he has this experience with the divine light of creation. I'm going to use that word, the divine light of creation. The divine light of creation. So this experience with God the Father, but maybe we can think of God the Father like that divine light that was blown into creation at the beginning of time, that made the world and made everything. And so Jesus has this experience on a mountaintop, and he comes down and he's all glowing, and he's been sort of transformed for a while because he had a direct experience with this divine light of creation, this divine thing. And so, and then you have a sense of this then at the resurrection, according to mythology, there was Jesus appeared, not like a ghost, but spiritually. And welcome, Maria. And Jeff is not going to be able to make it today, and I'm glad that you're here. And so Jesus was this transfigured human being who appeared. He appeared as an enhanced human being in a solid spiritual form, as what the mythology says, and was with the disciples for, I think, like, I don't know, 40 days or so, giving more further instructions about this other realm that exists, the other realm, the realm of divine light. So we're looking at the transcendence of human beings. So there's a couple of different themes that I kind of want to talk about today. There is this sense of a transcended human being, from a spiritual standpoint, which could affect the evolution of the body, of the biological form. And then there is this other form of transcending the biological form through technology, through our own science and knowledge. And so when I was looking back into where in literature, the first time that we kind of think of an enhanced human being came from like the story of Frankenstein in 1818. And so this human being was remade, that he was a reanimated human being. And so Dr. Frankenstein took a brain, or took body parts from the dead and stitched them together, electrodes in the head, and then with lightning from the sky, electricity, he zapped life into this being that was created out of human parts. And then this being rose. Now it was more on an instinctual, primitive level, but that was kind of the story. It was a monster story. And then we go in forward. We have into other literature, and you go up to H.G. Wells, The Time Machine. Now he did another story in there, and I hadn't read the other one, but The Time Machine. And in The Time Machine, they go forward in time in history, and they end up, and there are these other human beings that are I don't remember what they were called, but there were these other human beings. Maybe they were more like monsters, or they were, or whatever. They were more evolved or less evolved, because I guess there was like a nuclear war or something that had some destruction, and then they were the ones who came out of that apocalyptic event. Now, of course, that H.G. Wells' The Time Machine was written in the 1850s, I think. 1895. And then there was this Island of Dr. Moreau from 1896, 1895. So in the 1890s, you have this. And then there was another story called The Coming Race. And so The Coming Race was about, was an essay or a story in the 1870s about where humans would be evolved. About the evolution of humanity, and that humans were not done evolving. They would be further involved. Now, I don't know anything about that story. I didn't have time to really look this stuff up, but I was just preparing because Jeff wasn't going to be able to make it today. When we come back and revisit this topic, Jeff will be talking about more about the current events and the people who are pushing transhumanism today. But we're not going to be talking about that today, but we're going to talk a little bit. So if we look at like some of the places that transhumanism existed, and of course my first thought was the story of Dune, but then there is Huxley's Brave New World. And in Huxley's Brave New World, we are looking at, let me see, when was that? Go to my notes here. 1932. And so in 1932, the novel Brave New World was published and went out into the world. And in Brave New World, there is a complete separation between human sexuality and reproduction. So humans are no longer born from humans. They are now grown in a laboratory, or they come from hatchlings, and they have an artificial womb, and they are grown, and then the humans are divided into different classes. So you have like workers, and you have low intelligent ones, you have high intelligent ones, but overall, all the human beings are engineered to be happy and to be in a state of bliss. So while you are being a worker bee and you are mining coal, or you are doing this or that, or you are making matchsticks, you are happy. You're happy making matchsticks. You are happy because this is your destiny. This is what you were born to do. And so that is kind of in the Brave New World, is where we have recreated the earth. We've re-engineered humanity to be happy, but also to have different functions in society. And so if you're a thinker, you're a statesman, you would have those gifts. You would have those enhanced intelligence. You'd have enhanced abilities to work with machines and to build machines, enhanced intelligences, and maybe and whatnot. But also there was a sense of in this book that what I had remembered the most was the reservations. The reservation where they put the humans that the programming didn't stick, or if there was a natural born human being that they would put these reservations. So they had carved out whole states like Utah and like places in the Southwest, and they would just put these people in the reservations, and they could breed and they live kind of like how Australia was a penal colony at one time. It and where England took all of its prisoners and just dropped them off on the continent of Australia, and just let them live. And so they at least that's what I remember it as the story was, and about the beginnings of Australia as a penal colony. And so that's kind of this idea where in these reservations, humans were, whether they were criminal or this or that, they would go into that reservation. Now was Brave New World. And then from Brave New World, now there are some other things. We had Isaac Asimov's The Foundation also had the theme kind of weaved in there of transhumans, of where there is, but in The Foundation, human evolution was directed by AI robotics. And so there was a robot on old Earth that was directing evolution, or making changes to human from in a telepathic sense, that this robot could connect to the greater human species through higher dimensionality space. And so there was this planet Gaia. I think it was is that Second Foundation? No, I think it was at Foundation's Edge, the third book. So we have Foundation, we have Second Foundation, and there's Foundation's Edge. And then Foundation's Edge is where they introduce this concept of directed human evolution. And the planet there is Gaia, and the whole consciousness of the planet is united. And then there are individuals. So a tree knows it's a tree, an oak tree knows it's an oak tree, a fir tree knows it's a fir tree, a squirrel knows it's a squirrel, the fish knows it's a fish, the grass knows it's grass, and the people know they are people. And there were robots there amongst it, and all of their consciousnesses were united on a level, and they functioned together as a single unit. But this, I believe, was achieved originally through technology, and through technology, things like telepathy occurred. Now, also, there was the first foundation and the second foundation. And the first foundation, which was located at the edge of the galactic rim, and these were people who specialized in technology. science and technology. They had evolved to be able to eat. Their form was the same, but their human form was the same, but they had evolved to use and utilize and create with science and technology to create wondrous things, like the hyperdrives, or they had built a spaceship where they put their fingers into it, into the control panel, and the whole mind body united with the computer, and the human can direct navigation, and they can direct navigation, just think, and then it happens. And that is sort of where the technology goes. And then the second foundation, that people evolved to be telepathic, and they were manipulating human beings from afar telepathically. And so there was this sort of a fusion between these three powers in the Foundation series that were working to evolve humanity into a whole galaxy of a single mind, of a single consciousness. But still, as I had said before, where a tree knows it's a tree, a monkey knows it's a monkey, a dog knows it's a dog, and the human knows it's a human. But there is a whole nother level where everybody is connected together, where they know who they are collectively. And so that's kind of a sense of humans transcending themselves and directing their own evolution. Gatacca, we go to Gatacca, and as I mentioned earlier, in where Gatacca is, and we are at this point where we could do Gatacca. And where Gatacca is, it has two classes of human beings: those who are natural born, and those who use the CRISPR technologies. They have a whole bunch of, they can do designer babies. So you can design your baby to be an athlete. You can design them to be an intellectual. You can design them however you want to, but of course this is something for the wealthy to do. The wealthy can design their babies to be however they want. And then the story, of course, is about a guy who is an invalid human being who hijacks the system. And so there is this super athlete who ends up getting into an accident and becomes a paraplegic. And this guy, who is Ethan Hawke character, he borrows genetic material because he always wants to be an astronaut. He has an older brother or younger brother who is a valid human being. He is an invalid human being, and so the underworld of humanity is where these are the natural born human beings, the humans that were not enhanced in any way through technology. And so you have this sense of humans transcending themselves through genetic engineering. And the story, I don't really want you, if you've never seen the story or the movie of Gatacca, I really suggest that you watch it. But you have a guy, the invalid, who wants to become an astronaut, and he borrows genetic material from this valid human being and becomes and is able to pose as a valid human being, even though he is not. They have, like, the jobs are gatekept. They have the two levels of society, and so that economy, the overworld economy, they screen out all invalids from being able to come. You have to have a blood test. You know, you get on the job, you have a blood test, they look for your genetic material left behind, and just to make sure that everybody who is doing those jobs, it should be able to do those jobs. And then everybody who is not valid in that economy, they are what? Day laborers. They are they live in the sewers or something like that, the sewers of society, until all there is left is that they extinguish themselves, and so that there are no invalid human beings left. Of course, the movie just ends with the guy blasting off into space and being an astronaut. That's Gatacca. We have Brave New World, then Gatacca. Now, the other piece of literature I wanted to discuss was Dune. And Dune also has a transhuman element to the story. Now, maybe that's just me going back and reinterpreting, but it did, because it also had different classes of human beings who were designed and where they had human directed evolution. And so this is like one of I think the keyest themes about transhumanism is human directed evolution. And so whether this is something we should do or not, it remains to be seen. I think that we're probably going to do it if we survive this century. But in Dune, you have the Bene Gesserit, and they are trying to create this super being called the Kwisatz Haderach. And they are directing bloodlines, but they're using this spice melange, which is found on only one planet in the known galaxy or the known universe. And they are in themselves a type of super being. They are a more evolved human being that can they have a more evolved consciousness, a more evolved sight. And so with the spice, they can see into your genes. They can look at a person and see what their genetic makeup is. And they have certain ways that they can control and manipulate people, like with the voice and with other things. And then you have, with Dune, the other types of beings, the mentats. And the mentats are evolved. They have evolved the mentats in order to be the human computers. Because in the Dune world, they had in the prehistory. I've only read a couple of the novels that were written by Frank Herbert's son, but I've read the 3 novels of Dune. I can't remember. I think there's three novels. I think the third one was The Children of Dune, and I think one was The Prophet or something like that. And they but anyways, you have these and they had a war. They had a war with their artificial intelligence, a war with their robotics in a prehistory before they had found the spice melange human beings. They traveled on slow ships, but they had a war. And then they passed a law that they were to not make any more thinking machines. No more thinking machines, because the thinking machines went out of control, and they went to extinguish the human, and they almost were extinguished or went extinct at the hands of the AI. And so AI was forbidden. And so then, but then they still, these humans were going to, for enhancements, for evolution, and they were directing their own evolution. And then with the spice, it made this possible because the spice was some kind of a psychedelic drug that allowed people to see what couldn't be seen. And the spice itself changed the body. And so there was the different types of people that were evolved out of the spice: the mentats, the guild navigators, the Bene Gesserit, the Kwisatz Haderach, and then they have these other creatures like the face dancers, and then there's the Talaxu, the peoples who they made the gulas, I think is what they called. They were where they were able to resurrect a dead human being by cloning them. And so, you know, you can have I think in Dune there was Duncan Idaho, and Duncan Idaho was continually being cloned and recloned and recloned, or regrown and regrown and regrown. And then the memories were somehow at first, when they get them, they didn't have the memories, but somehow this this gula was able to remember who he was eventually. And so the first gula of Duncan Idaho was made as an assassin, but then it at the last minute it changed and it became Duncan Idaho, which was Paul Atreides' companion, and so forth. And so you have these different classes of humans that were evolved. So I mentioned the navigators, the mentats, and so what there were here was like the face dancers. They were the shapeshifters, and these were all things that the emperor and they would use as in order to have control over the people. And so these were not the worlds themselves were not, they weren't free. The people weren't free. There were a free people, and they were the Fremen. They were fighters, and they were transformed from the original human being through their spirituality, which their spirituality was derived from the spice. I wonder if I can be heard at all. I hope I can be heard. I should probably have tested that out. Can I be heard? No. That's probably why nobody's staying, is because I can't be heard, that this microphone's not working. But it showed that it was working. I should be testing it here. Yeah. Oh, but it showed that it was. Okay, it is working good. All right. So, anyways, and so the Fremen were more evolved, but they were more evolved like into a super soldier. And there were other super soldiers that the Empire used in order to to control the Emperor himself. The Sardaukar, they were a super soldier, and so they had a lot of human beings that were enhanced, and they were more evolved. And so that was Dune with the guild navigators. The navigators were evolved to such a degree that they could see through higher dimensionality space, and their job was essentially to take these barges, and they would load the barges up with essentially with spacecraft, and they would go fold space. They would move from one part of the universe to another. And that's what the guild navigators, what they did. or they worked the mechanisms. Okay, good, you can hear me. So they worked the machines that were not thinking machines, but they were machines that they were allowed to have, and in order to move from one part of the universe to another, and so they could see clear. So one of the things the navigators did is they looked through space to make sure that when that barge reappeared, it wasn't like on the inside of a planet. So it was in orbit, it was in a safe spot, and so that was what their job was. That was the guild navigators. And so there were the Bene Gesserit, there were the cloners, the face dancers. Then there were these other ones, these truth sayers, where they could tell if you were telling lies or whatnot, and so so forth. That was kind of the Dune universe as far as the enhanced human beings were. Now, I'm going to segue over back to into a different kind of a thought, and this is where I'm going to close this out at here. And this kind of just occurred to me today. While I was preparing for this occurred to me today, in that there is a sense of spiritual evolution that exists within even within Christianity. There is this sense of the transformed human being. And I was like, my mind just kind of went back to Paul and to the book of Ephesians 4 to be exact. And I'll just paraphrase it, where there is the teachers, the saints, and there was another one. But there are the jobs of the teachers and the guides of the church. What their job was to inform the body of believers so that they would do the work of God. And through doing the work of God, they would become into a form of divine union with one another. And not just a union with one another, but a union with God. They would become, this body of Christ would become like Christ, like the risen Christ. And so this thought to me is where I got a long time ago, that I thought that the second coming had already occurred. Wherever two or three are gathered, this other figure, this Christ consciousness would also be there, the Holy Spirit. And that was what the promise was. And then with the whole Paul, I think if Paul wrote Ephesians, I'm not sure if Paul did, but in Ephesians, whoever the author was of Ephesians, talking about this sense that the appearance of the Christ consciousness in the body of believers when they did the work of the God. They did the work of the Christ, which is feeding people, caring for the sick, and so forth. And these are the and having a system of justice where there is justice, social justice is achieved. And this is the work of God as it is on earth. And so but today it came to me, it's like, well, hold on. So that would be a sense that spiritually people can be transformed. It's that transformation of the human, that they can transcend this state and become another state. And in this sense is through doing the work of God, or do the work of the divine light. Now, I think on this level, but there was the divine light is a bit further removed than in this world of shadows that we live in. But then there were some other occurrences of, if I, in recollections of transformed beings, or we look at the hybrid. So if you were like Eric von Däniken, you would see this as God, as alien human hybrids, the Nephilium in Genesis 6, where the gods, the gods, or the angels saw that the human female was beautiful. They mated with the human female, and their offspring were these superhuman, angelic like creatures. They were giants, and then they marauded over the earth, and they created havoc. And then God saw that these creations had gone wild, and they needed to send the flood to destroy the Nephilim. And so that's the idea in that story. And then, and of course, Eric von Däniken also looked at the Sodom and Gomorrah stories, that maybe this was a place where a genetic program went awry, and then God destroyed those places. And so that's you're looking at the ancient alien theory, but I was kind of talking about it at a different thing. And so you have the Nephilim, a spirit directed transformation, a evolution of human by combining a angelic being with the human being to create a transcendent human, or transformed human, a superhuman, so to speak. So that those were those kinds of things. And I forgot, there was one other piece of science fiction that I forgot to mention, and it was Altered Carbon. And so we'll just take a step back. I saw like 2 or 2.5 seasons of the Altered Carbon. I think it came out on Netflix like in 2018. I watched it in 2020 during lockdown. I watched it then because I briefly subscribed to Netflix. I stopped subscribing to it because I felt like I couldn't watch enough. I wasn't getting my money's worth, so I ended my subscription to Netflix. But I found it was on Netflix, and Altered Carbon, where the wealthy, where people could upload their consciousness or their brains to a cloud server, and then it would be like stored on these little discs or so forth. And so if you went into prison, you would be not allowed to re-download your consciousness into another body. So they could essentially achieve immortality, because their essence was encoded on a disk, and then it was stored on a server, and it could be retrieved at any time, and then it'd be re-downloaded into a body that was grown, a cloned body that was grown, or a new body that was grown with maybe your specific enhancements that you wanted to have. And so these were places but there are lots of other examples in literature and fiction and science fiction, and in like television or movie programs about transhumanism. And then I'm going to go back into where the thought of me coming from a spiritual evolution. And actually, it was a podcast that I just listened to a couple of days ago on Next Level Soul. I included a link to that in the description to that one, and I can't remember the lady's name, but nevertheless, the link is there. But she was a channeler of some kind who was talking to the kind of raising her consciousness up and connecting into what they call this collective that exists within the realm of divine light, and talking about our world, and in that if we choose to do this, that through these spiritual forces, these energetic forces, spiritual may not, that's the word we have for it, but that's not the word that it is. It is through these energetic forces that we can choose to evolve into, we can choose to evolve the biology of these bodies. And not just the body, but that we can redirect evolution, maybe to choose to evolve these bodies in such a way that we can survive climate change. We may not survive climate change, but this is a choice to be made between the light and the darkness. But she was very adamant to say that this is not a choice between good and evil. It's a choice between freedom and slavery. And so where the world that we're in now is one where we are slaves. We are slaves to this system of darkness and shadows and this shadowy world of darkness where with the stratification, the social stratification of people and the powers, and so like the things that keep us in darkness, like our religion for power, is something that keeps us in the dark, and it keeps us away from experiencing the divine light that is within us, that has always been within us. And there's a part of us that is divine light, and then there's this other divine light, the divine light that created the universe, that created the all that is. And so that's kind of what I have. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if you're watching this on the playback, please leave 3 like astrological emojis in the comment section. So that would be like maybe a shooting star. Yeah, shooting stars. 3 shooting stars in the Expedition 33 wins all. Thank you, At Ruins. You came right towards the end. What is Expedition 333? Could you just summarize that in just a moment before I turn the camera off or anything? And then I'm going to be back on Friday night for a second open. So it's a video game. I see. I see. Well, that sounds cool. That sounds like it's a lot of fun. So, Red Rocket liftoff, yeah. Okay. All right. And so tomorrow night, I'm going to be back with another open panel talk show. So if you want to come on and just talk to me, you can. I'll have a link to the live stream in the chat, and you'll be able to come on and talk with me for a random live conversation. And I hope that you will join me tomorrow night. I think I have it scheduled out at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. And so please join me tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time for my second Talk to Me, because I am moving towards having a call-in talk show here. So that'll be my second time tomorrow night at 8:30. And so please join me. Then I will start on time at 8:30 or maybe 8:35. And then you can come in and talk to me. And so you'll be there. Great. So maybe, Maria, you can come in and talk to me, come up on the screen. But you know what, Maria, you don't have to use your face. If you want to just turn the camera off and it'll just have your to do that, we can do that, and you can just be your face, not your face, just whatever that emoji that you know, your profile picture that you have on your YouTube channel, and you can come in and we can chat it up, just about anything. It doesn't really matter what we can talk about. It's just open lines, just open random conversations. I'll probably start it off with something totally random. I'll think about it tonight or tomorrow, maybe. Who knows what it'll be. But anyways, I'm gonna see you all later. Thank you, Maria, for hanging out here for a second, and for that other dude, Ruins03, for popping in. And then there were a whole bunch of other people who popped in and out. So it's a date. Yeah, that's right, Maria. Your first date with 999 show, right? Okay. All right, let's see. All right, so we can mute the mic out when I start coughing and stuff like that. And all right, anyways, I'm going to start making dinner before I get into trouble. It's in that time frame. It's too bad that Jeff couldn't make it, but he was feeling really. Oh, you went in and out a few times? Yeah. Anyways, next week I'm going to come back next week with more on the transhumanism, and this time we'll be talking with, hopefully Jeff will be able to make it because he wasn't feeling too well today, and we'll have that discussion because he has that other piece of information when it comes to the more current events, and how through current events this idea of transhumanism is coming into the picture. I started out with how it exists in fiction, and I'll probably pop back in with more thoughts on fiction and literature, and this whole concept of you know, of this sense of spiritual evolution, and how we created this world. We created what we are through this divine light because of the beings that we were created as. But not only us created this, everyone else out there, from the grass to the fish, to the birds in the air, to the whales, the elephants, the dogs and the cats, the cows, all of them are conscious beings on a particular level, and they are creating their realities too. And so that this sense of our evolution, or even our biological evolution changing, is coming into the knowledge that of the truth of this, but actually experiencing it. I have had glimpses of this when I was younger, and I will talk. I'll try to remember to talk about. Well, maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow night. But talking about these glimpses of this consciousness of the world, and my first experienced it when I was firefighting just after I graduated from college, and I worked as a wildland firefighter, and I was in the mountains of Wallowa, Oregon, and we weren't, at this time, we didn't actually have an active fire that we were creating, but we were in this area. There was some stuff that we were doing, some fire line work, but I was up on a mountain this one time, and I was just sitting. And I think for the most part, I was just by myself, but I'm sure that there were like 3 or 4 other people of the crew that were around. Maybe they were taking a nap or something like that, but I was just sitting, and I felt the spirit of life all around me. I felt like deer. I felt like a deer that had been destroyed by the fire. I felt the deer there. I felt the spirit of the ants on the ground. I felt the spirit of life as it had been spilled out, still present after that fire had ripped through there. And that was that experience with that consciousness. And so, it's like some people, I've had too many of these experiences to undo them. And if I know that there are many people who think I'm lost and I need to become an evangelical or have this personal relationship with Jesus or whatever that means. But I've had these other relationships with spirit, and I've had too many of them to forget about them, to put all that behind and to go back. For me, it would be like going back into the darkness. Now, there are plenty of instances where I go back into where I exist into that dark world with other things, and I don't need to talk about them, but we all have that, where we choose fear, where we choose anger. I mean, just recently this week, it was making a post on TikTok that where I was trolling a particular group of people. I think I got like 10,000 hits on it so far, and a lot of anger and a lot of whatnot. And so that was an act of choosing those dark forces, that dark energy of our world, the fear or the whatever it's that, or that sense of self-aggrandizement. And in that, that self-aggrandizement, that is also kind of a dark force of, and presenting yourself in a way that you're not being your authentic self. Anyways, that's all I have for today. I'll be back tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. I think is when I have it scheduled. Yeah, 8:30 p.m. for Talk to Me. And I hope you all come. And if you just pop in, that you will be able to, through StreamYard, you'll be able to pop in and talk to me. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.